All right. Should we podcast?
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Avery Collins. And I got to just tell you, so I'm stoked to be able to podcast with you. I'm going to share a quick story of how embarrassed I am from the first time we met. Because so I've been a fan of Speedland shoes for a very long time. I had their founders on my podcast, and I was so stoked that the SVT shoe came out and all of that stuff. And then I met you, and I don't know if it was because it was out of context or the end of a long day or whatever, but it just over my head. So and then it's been fun to reconnect and stay in touch on social media and stuff. Yeah. And then finally I had the courage to just be like, dude, I'd love to pick your brain again. So I appreciate you, letting me get through my blunder at the beginning and, still carving out some time with me because I'm super excited. It's been, it's been fun. For everybody listening, Avery, you're a professional runner. You're a coach. You're also a full-time resident of Silverton, which I think is really notable. It's one of the things I want to talk about today. What is the population of Silverton?
They say it's 600.
Give or take.
Yeah. I feel like there's probably like 100 to 150 of those people that are there for half the year, whether it be summertime or winter, because you have a lot of ski people that come in and then don't stay through the summer, and then same thing on the other side.
Right. When did you move to Silverton?
2018. I was there for 5 months, and then floated back to Steamboat for a short bit, and then spring of 2019 permanently.
Got it, yeah. Tell me about that. And it's actually not where I intended to start, but I am curious about what's it like living in Silverton year-round, and I want to hear about what it's like training in Silverton year-round too, because I think one of the unique things about you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd only outdoor train, right? I mean, or at least majority of your training is...
I don't have a treadmill.
Yeah.
So outside of like lifting's inside, but I don't take those outside.
All your running training is outside in Silverton year-round.
Yep. And like, I think the first thing I have to say about living and training in Silverton is I wake up like incredibly grateful every day and have for years, like every single day. And especially once the summertime rolls around, you realize like this window is really short. Like I've have to embrace every single moment. And it's really special. I think probably most people are aware that the weather is always pretty tough. Like if it's sunny, it's windy. If it's not sunny, it's cold and snowing and raining, and like there's a lot of elements that come with living there that I've grown to actually really appreciate. Sometimes they can bite you in the butt. Like I'll never forget training for Hard Rock. I was like going out of my way on like the bad weather days, rain, snow, sleet, and I was like going out for runs with no shirt and just short shorts and just suffering because I thought, well, if this comes on race day, I'm going to be such a savage.
I'll be ready, yeah.
And then race day came, and it was just like...
It's spectacular.
It was nuclear hot. And I just...
The opposite.
And there was, like, it was my own fault, but, like, there was a section where I really suffered because I didn't take enough water, and it later on would bite me in the butt. But all to say, there's, like, so much to take away from living there. It makes everywhere else seem so incredibly easy. It's just, like, you get used to it always being windy. It's always windy. And if it's nice in town, like that's one thing, but like you go skiing in the winter, you always end up getting up high and it's like it's always windy. Right. And you just get used to that and it becomes normal, and I just find that I can go to other places and kind of thrive because the conditions are generally more mild.
Is that what I'm very interested with that comment about that you wake up grateful every morning. Is that because of what the conditions allow you to train under, or is there another kind of driving force for that, like grateful wake up? And unpack that for me.
I think that's a piece of it. It's definitely not the majority of it. What I'm most grateful for is I don't run into people, period. Like, especially once the summertime rolls around. If I'm not on the Hard Rock course, like, I'm not going to run into anybody, and I generally don't run the Hard Rock course. It's fun sometimes if I want to run a little faster, which might upset some people because the Hard Rock course is like the easy running in Silverton, right. And then there's everything else. And there's really small things like I have my own trails. Like, I take care of them. They're old mining trails that are just super hidden off of random trails or off of service roads, and like they're so hard to find, and I've just found them sometimes through coincidence, or like I'll sometimes I get bored and I'll just go off trail for the day and just run a bunch of off trail routes and end up running into these old mining trails.
Right.
And I'll ride them till they fizzle out, and then if I feel like they're usable in the fall, this is something I've been doing for years. In the fall, I go back with my electric chainsaw and I clear these trails out, and I have probably 3 or 4 very specific trails that I don't know if anyone exist except for me. And it's a pain in the butt because like every fall you're clearing like 30 to 40 trees, but like the reality is it doesn't take a ton of time, and it's totally worth it when like I can wake up and run from my door to a private trail that goes up a mountainside.
Right. It's like, I mean, I can't think of, especially, for somebody who's a professional, trail ultra runner like yourself, like I literally can't think of a more idealistic circumstance than being in Silverton and having essentially, some trail systems to yourself. The other cool thing about it's your content on social media is so fun to watch because you're always seeing cool stuff. Like, did you see a wolverine?
I saw a wolverine last week, but that was in Crested Butte.
Okay.
Which probably makes or for me it makes sense because I was kind of questioning myself, so I got online to make sure that was what I saw. There's no doubt about it. It was a wolverine.
Right.
And it turns out they started releasing wolverines last year, so the odds of running into one are so slim.
Yeah.
But they require high snowfall and really cold temperatures, and I was probably like 12 miles outside of Crested Butte in like the middle of nowhere. And I was probably at like 11,500 feet, and I was running up a service road, and here comes this animal sprinting directly at me. My guess is it had no idea that I was there. But the thing is, like, it eventually realized I was there, and it just kept running at me. And I hit like this moment where I'm like, I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do now because this thing's already hauling ass.
There's no like protocol for what you do if face to face with a wolverine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even. I would have no idea what to do.
And all of my, I mean, not all, but like a lot of my like more kind of like scary wildlife encounters, I never remember to like think about getting my phone out because it's always this in the moment. I'm like, okay, feel this out. What am I supposed to do? What's the animal doing? And then go from there. But I never think to get my phone out, and that would have been so awesome. But I'd say like 30 yards away from me, it finally cut down the mountain and into this little hole. And I ran right by that probably because I was doing repeats. It's the time of the year where like there's so much snow that you're kind of like
you're
stuck.
Limited. Yeah.
And I probably ran by it 6 more times and didn't see it again. I was kind of hoping maybe it'd like pop its head out or something.
Right.
But it was black and white, and like it had the big old claws.
Like undoubtedly a wolverine.
Oh, there's nothing that is this size.
Right.
Because they're like a very distinct size. They're not small. They're not big. But they're like this medium-sized dog with just monster claws and huge feet. That was pretty cool.
And then you recently too, because I'm going somewhere with this, but there was maybe it was Silverton or maybe it was Crested Butte, but you also recently just posted like one of the most epic, like I think it was frameable photo of a herd of elk.
Yeah.
And there was the sun kind of. I mean, it's like the stuff. My point is the stuff that you get to see. Living and training in places. Are you familiar with Donnie Vincent by chance?
I'm not.
So he's a pretty well-known backcountry hunter.
Okay.
And I've just finished reading a book called The Comfort Crisis. It's an awesome read, but the author goes on an Alaskan hunting trip with Donnie, and he like uses all these examples about how comfort for human beings and the harm that it's causing us, and like putting ourselves in these uncomfortable situations. But what Donnie says is that in order to experience incredible things, you have to put yourself in incredible places.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I think that's one of the coolest things about ultra running for me, and even just trail running in general, is it kind of puts you in places where you normally wouldn't, wouldn't go. And I can't even imagine like what the day-to-day is for you up there, because I mean the San Juans, I almost get like nervous about how much people they're just such epic mountains, and I think that people sometimes don't give them the credit they deserve for how rugged it is up there.
I always like to say that like there's Colorado and then there's the San Juans.
Yeah.
Because once you go to the San Juans, you realize the rest of the state's actually kind of flat.
Right.
And it's more like like the Wasatch has really big mountains, but they're just, the volume of them is so big that they kind of become more of this huge low angle grind versus you just get really stacked mountains and peaks in Silverton or in the San Juans in general, and it makes everything just extraordinarily steep because, you know, in just an 8-mile length of road out of town, there's, you know, 16 to 20 peaks versus like in the Wasatch, you know, that 8 miles would just be Mount Elbert.
Right, yeah. Yeah, kind of the rolling foothills, and,
Yeah.
you know, you can work your way up there.
Yeah.
Did you ever think in a million years you would live in Silverton? I want to go back a little bit and answer that question, but I want to hear kind of how this whole journey started for you, and, you know, now, because I just think it's so epic. Like, I would live in Silverton if my wife would let me, probably. I say that, doing it and actually executing on it is a whole nother story, but it's just such a cool place. And I think there's a very few group of people that, like, living in Silverton actually makes sense, you know, and you're one of them, which is, it's awesome is my point.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, you know, when you're looking back and knowing that idea of, you know, waking up grateful, like, walk me through the journey. How did we end up, you know,
Well,
living and running and
yeah.
doing it all in Silverton?
I first went to Silverton in 2014. And that was when I moved to Colorado. I moved to Steamboat, and gosh, 1 week after moving there, the Hard Rock was going on, and I wanted to see Killian race. So we went out there, and the reality is I never thought I would live there. Like, I got there and I was overwhelmed. Like, everything seemed so big and exaggerated and, I guess, dangerous.
Right. It's just epic, maybe the right word. I don't know. But.
Exactly. And it did not cross my mind. Like, this is not the place. Like, I can't handle this. And, you know, years go by living in Steamboat, and I do a bit of traveling and start to get into more difficult races.
In 2014, were you competitively running at that point, or what was the running career looking like in 2014 when you moved to Colorado?
I would say like halfway to competitive. In 2014, I ran my first 100 at Fat Dog 120, and I finished third, and that was kind of like the taste of like, oh, I think I could do something here.
Yeah.
And which is crazy to think about now because everything's, including myself, but like the sport has gotten so much faster, and that third place was like meaningless. And I went back and ran that race again in 19. And like just absolutely flattened my old time. Like, it was not a night and day difference. And so in 2018, my partner at the time got into Hard Rock, and we decided to go camp out there for the summer, and just lived out of a no running water, no electricity camper for 4 months. And I loved it, we loved it, and decided we'd move back for the next year. And we just kept our eye on places, and like, gosh, we moved into, just so we could live in Silverton, it must have been, people are gonna think I'm over exaggerating, it was probably like 150 square foot place. Like,
I believe it.
You could touch the bed, the refrigerator, the sink, and the front door all in one spot. And yeah, we just made it work. And you know, now I feel like I feel like I'm a part of the community. Like,
right.
It's easy to feel like you're part of the community because like I know everybody
like,
now.
I was gonna say, all 12 of you? No,
yeah.
I'm kidding.
and it's just, I mean, to answer your question, no, I honestly didn't think I'd be living in Silverton. And you know, now that I've been there for 6-7 years, like, it's really crazy because when I get to travel to all these really incredible places, whether it be in the U.S. or otherwise, and no matter what, every time I get back to Silverton, I'm like, I don't want to live there. Like, home is the vacation. Like, it's so weird going places that are really incredible, and like, I feel like I just downplay them to my friends, and I'm like, sorry, man, like, I live in Silverton, it's better than everywhere else.
Yeah.
It's really wild, and that's like what I'm really grateful for. I did a whole summer last summer living out of that same camper again. This time was by myself, and I kind of went everywhere but California, Utah, New Mexico, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Washington, Oregon. and always kind of had that thought in the back of my mind, would I live here? And then I went back home in the fall, and it's just like, those places are cool. And I think what it comes down to is there are bigger mountains. There are bigger and maybe arguably more like technical, rowdy mountains in the U.S. The trouble is you have to drive to all the trailheads.
Right.
You can start right from town and do countless mountains and runs right from
Endless.
town. And that's the part that, like, I don't want to give up. Like, I just don't want to have to drive every day to get to something cool. It just seems so irritating. It's like, yeah.
I love it, and it's just so cool. I share that like gratitude sentiment in Durango, which, you know, it's nothing compared to Silverton. But I was so my wife just recently ran the Thelma and Louise trail run in Moab, and my sister was training for it too, and we were just, you know, small talking if she's been training on trails or whatever. She lives in Salt Lake City, and she was explaining to me how difficult it is for her to get to trails, you know, with work and her kids and whatever. And I was like, gosh, I hope I never take for granted how lucky I am that I can leave from my office and go on real trail runs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's nothing like Silverton, but I get some great, I mean, just today,
Right.
you know, 6 miles with some decent vert and like beautiful views, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
And I think there's something so powerful about like appreciating where you're getting to live. And then for you, I think there's definitely career benefits, you know, like there's for sure performance benefits from it. One of the things I'm curious about though, because you talked about that, you talked about just like kind of the brief evolution, but you know, coming here, living in the camper or the RV or whatever it was called. One of the things I'm curious about is usually when somebody's a pro athlete, you kind of assume that there's like these massive paychecks with it. You know what I mean? Like any other sport, if you're a professional athlete, you know, you're making it. I kind of got the impression from your story there that there's this like passion pursuit or chasing the dream, or maybe it was a lifestyle thing or something. Maybe, and help me with the timeline on it, either before you were pro or after or whatever. And again, even if it's after, it's not like there's these, you know, multi-million-dollar deals floating around right now. I'm fascinated with the mindset behind that, and like, because you've seen so much success in your career, and it's been so cool. I meant to actually start the podcast with, it's called Chasing Greatness, but we're in the presence of greatness. You know, like the resume is so long, and there's all this cool stuff that you've done. But I got a glimpse there as you were talking that there's been like, I don't know, this passion pursuit along the way, like to move and live in 150 square foot, you know, apartment, or spend a summer in an RV traveling or whatever. Walk me through that. What came first? And, you know, the passion and then the talent, or what was kind of that like pursuit journey? Or am I jumping to conclusions and assuming that there was kind of that like lifestyle choice before the paycheck started coming?
Well, I've kind of always ignorantly believed that I could do something with this even before I had any accomplishments. But the reality is like the decision for a place like Silverton is synonymous with my decisions on a day-to-day basis, and it's actually not about running. It's just about being out in the mountains, which is why I backcountry ski all winter. Like, it's not so much specifically about the running. It's just what is going to be the fastest way to move through the mountains in the day. And, you know, that really guides my decisions. And I don't have a structured schedule with my running. Obviously I'm on Strava, but like I kind of keep a mental log over the last 7 to 10 days, and I'm aware of what I have done and what I haven't done. And most days I literally just go out and I tell myself, like, run 5 miles, just run 5 miles. And then if you're not feeling it, go back home, and then we'll try again in the evening. And sometimes that's what happens. But most of the time it just results in me doing 12, 15, 20 miles because you just get going. And I don't generally plan a route. I just start running and then I make a decision. And some days, like, I just want to go do some easy 4x4 road running, or maybe I want to go up a steep trail. And then there's the days that's like, let's see how many peaks we can
Go get after it.
bag before the sun drops, and then catch a ride back home from like a Jeep because I'm too tired to run home. That's happened more times than I'd like to admit. Like I like get this grand idea like halfway through my run that like, oh, I could just bag like 5 more peaks a day and then I'll come back on the county road.
Think about
Yeah, and then I get on the county road and I'm like out of food and water and I just like thumb out.
Don't tell anyone, as I'm saying it on my podcast, but I've caught myself hitchhiking in Silverton from similar stuff. Usually for me, it's been hunting.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, it's all I could do to get back to the road, and then I'm just screwed,
It's like an easy place to catch a ride too. And the reality is like if I have to come home on one of the easy county roads, that's cool. But I think part of it might just be a mental block. Like you go through this whole epic day.
You kind of have finished it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to the county road where like all the Jeeps and side by sides are on, and it's like, well, this isn't very cool.
Talk to me about that love for the mountains, because I share it. I mean, there's just something so healing and like powerful in the mountains for me. Like I found I work really hard here, and so I get like these back-to-back days where I've kind of got a mental drain, and I'll have all sorts of meetings and they're all on Zoom, and I'm like just working like crazy. And if I don't purposefully get specifically outdoor mountain time and exercise, ideally at the same time, exercising in the mountains, it messes with me. Like I start to be, I don't know, I'm like a little bit more short fused. I feel a little bit more like frantic. It just kind of messes with me. Yeah. And then I can get out in the mountains and reset. And then, when I get time to like turn off technology and like really be out there, it's amazing. Where did your love for the mountains come from? Because I love that you're talking about how like, life in Silverton's not just about running, it's about the life in the mountains, and even your passion for backcountry skiing and stuff like that. When were you introduced to the mountains, and kind of walk me through the love for it?
I actually think that would have been a really hard question to answer 10 years ago when I started mountain running, or however long ago. And then after moving to Silverton, it was my first big winter of skiing, and I guess it's split boarding. I call it skiing. I mean, like 80% of the time they are skis.
Right.
And I had this realization after this really big day out with my friends, and that was like when we returned to the car, I felt this just flood of real life come back to me, of thoughts, this flood of real life thoughts, whether it be coaching or paying bills or, there's a basketball game on tonight, whatever it is. And I think all along, that's what I've been chasing, is when you're out challenging yourself on challenging terrain, it requires 100% focus. And there's just, for me, this complete loss of thought. And I feel like there's definitely a tricky balance with that, because that gets harder to obtain as you get used to certain terrain.
Right.
And, I've found the balance. While I'm not old, I am older than I was, and I'm making better decisions.
You're not as young as you used to be?
Yeah. After some shoulder dislocations and broken wrists and broken ankle and all the good stuff, I'm taming it down a little bit, but that's what I'm like. I think that's what I go out for every day, is like, how can I find that complete and utter silence? And I don't mean that from like, don't get me wrong, I love going out and running because I don't run into anybody and it's quiet, but I'm looking for just nothingness. And I guess like the hippity-dippity way to look at it is just like being mindful and present. But for me, I just like to describe it as just absolute nothingness. Yeah. Because you have to focus. Like, I'm not always running crazy stuff, but I do enjoy that. And like, you really do have to focus. And like, I don't want to have some type of really bad accident or fatal accident, because I know like there's a part of that that's a little selfish and would, hurt the people around me.
Right. Yeah. And geez. And in Silverton, there's definitely no fall zones. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, what came first? That that enjoyment and that passion for, well, and I love how you're describing it as kind of like nothingness, because you're describing it well. It's so hard to articulate, but it's like you're solely focused on something, and because of that, everything else gets blocked out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you're probably right that the technicality of where you're at, I'm sure, contributes to it. But you probably, I mean, I accomplish it on road runs.
Yeah.
You know, still. I mean, it's definitely there. Did your athletic ability lead to that, or do you think that you started to enjoy that, and then that, kind of helped your athletic ability shine? Was there an order?
I think you nailed that. Like, the athletic part definitely came first, because I started running in North Carolina, and would do mountain runs in North Carolina and Virginia, and like
in the
Smokies, and like a lot in Asheville. Like, I really love Asheville, but there's less of that. And what I found early on when I first started racing was I had a competitive drive from playing basketball my whole life, and that is what led me to, like, when I was first starting racing, I would go out like a bat out of hell, and I'd find myself in the lead and no one around. And then that's when I found out, race after race, that like, oh man, I really love when I can get away from everybody.
When I'm alone.
Like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to be out here and do my own thing. And my competitive drive literally forced me right into realizing, like, oh, this is the part that I really like, is when everyone's gone and I can just do my own thing. And I would literally run, like, I started races with that thought, was like, just go out fast so you can get away from everybody.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and at the time, those races were like not competitive. Like, I could do that. Some of the races I do now, like, that's just not an option, because
right.
it would turn a 100K race into a 20K race for me.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting though. Help me unpack that a little bit too. Like that background of competitiveness, the mindset with starting a race full charge, but you kind of have that caveat of that it's so that you can get to that space of like being alone and in the rhythm and in that zone. So I would imagine that there's a level of satisfaction that comes when that occurs. Do you know if that's because you've accomplished the aloneness, for lack of a better term, or is it because you're winning? Like, if you're looking at like what's contributing to the success of those moments, is it like what percentage of that is competitive versus what percentage of it is the stillness, the aloneness of it?
I think that has ebbed and flowed over time. My first few years, I didn't have expectations, so I was out there purely like for the joy of it, and had enough athleticism to find decent results. And then I'd say for 4 or 5 years, like 2017 to 2022 was just full steam ahead. What can I race? What can I win in terms of kind of the biggest races on the highest levels? And I feel like I have I really think I'm on my second wind of my career right now, where not only am I getting faster, but I'm doing it from a very different place. Like, I just raced 5 or 6 weeks ago at Gorge Waterfalls. I had zero expectations. I told myself, have fun and run fast. And more importantly, run fast in the first half and run faster in the second half.
Right.
And I was out. Honestly, the first 50K, I just enjoyed myself. I didn't race last year. I wasn't on the brink. I was burnt out. I was so sick and tired of racing, and it was the competitive part. It was just mentally eating me alive, and I would argue, showing in some of my results. So I took a whole summer off to just travel and run in a bunch of very unique places. And I'd say 2 or 3 weeks before Gorge Waterfalls, I just randomly decided to run the race. And because I was coming off of it was good training. It wasn't hyper-focused run training. I was like lifting, running, and skiing every single day. But it's like, 30 to 45 minutes of lifting, 60 to 90 minutes of running, 3-4 hours of skiing, and like all of it had a lot of value. So I was very fit, but I wouldn't argue I was in good shape. I wasn't in great shape. So going into the race, I just reminded myself, like, hey, you live in Silverton. There's a lot of guys here that are, you know, Boulder, so on and so forth. They've been training specifically for this event, and like, you can't put yourself up to the expectations that they have because this is their A race for the year. Like, I signed up 2 weeks before the race, and I found that because I was having such a good time, I was running really fast and set a PR by like a lot. And it's just to like speak to the competitiveness of the sport. My goal time there was 9 hours, which every single year up to this year would have podiumed, and even won kind of in the earlier years, but like second and third on years with Jim Walmsley in the field.
Right. And
I ran an 8:58, so, you know, awesome. You know, I accomplished the goal, and I finished in 9th place.
Crazy.
And the top 4 men all went under Jim Walmsley's record.
It's crazy. So 4th place could have been the new course record and didn't even podium?
Yes.
Wild.
Which is really incredible. It helps, I think, everybody in the field to have something to chase nonstop. And I'm really pumped on where the sport is going, and I'm also just really happy that like I'm managing to grow with it.
And I want to unpack that because I think that's fascinating, and that's, so bear with me because I've got kind of a multi-part question, right? Because my gears are cranking. But you mentioned earlier, like at the beginning of our conversation, we touched a little bit on the evolution of, you know, ultra trail running, and because one of the things that I think is unique about you, and you know, I don't know everybody's story by any means. I don't even know all of your story, but you've maintained a high level of competitiveness for a very long time. That in and of itself is very unique. You talked about this, like the fact that trail running has evolved so much, and I think it's one of the things I want to learn from you and unpack from you is how you think you've been able to continually evolve, you know, with it. You were joking earlier that you're not as young as you used to be, or, you know, all the injuries or whatever. But, and then I'm curious how you think that year off played into it too. And I'll just share a quick one with that, and then I want to hear your answer. But I flirt with burnout, like, as we speak. I'm burnt out, like, for sure. And it ebbs and flows for me. Like, I have days when I'm like, things are great, I'm good to go. And then I have days where I'm like, I don't know how much more sustainable this is. And I've wrestled with, I've never been good about like slowing down to speed up. You know what I mean? Like taking my foot off the gas or resting or taking the break, or I don't think I've taken a day off of work and, you know, other than the weekends, but I haven't like taken time off of work in years. I tried to last Friday. We went to Denver. I saw you were in Denver too, by the way.
Yeah.
We were in Denver this last weekend, and I was like, I'm taking Friday off. I'm doing it. And then I get there, I've got like 60 emails, and I'm in the hotel room, like, what are we doing? You know, I can't be doing this. But I'm so sorry for the multi-point question, but I'm fascinated on 2 fronts. How you think you've been able to evolve with a sport that I think is one of the most rapidly evolving sports that we're experiencing right now. Like, all of the changes in ultra trail running, it's been wild. I mean, even that little anecdote you said right there about a 4th place finish that could have been a year ago would have been the course record is just crazy. I mean, that encapsulates it right there.
Yeah.
And then I want to hear about the year off more. I want you to unpack that a little more and kind of the benefits that you saw from that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I start with the year off?
That'd be great.
So I realized that I was sick and tired of racing, and I needed to get back to like just purely the joy of it. And there was something I remembered that I doubt he remembers telling me this. In 2015 or 16, I was running the Cruel Jewel 100, and I was riding with Carl Melzer, and I asked him if there's like any piece of advice you could give me, what would it be? And he told me that after 10 years of ultra running, he took a full year off and didn't do a single race. And he said it was what prolonged his career and like kind of jump started the second phase, and that stuck with me for a long time. And last year was my 11th year. So after 10 years, I took a year off, and I just did everything on my terms. Like, instead of focusing on maybe some things that like I'm not very interested in, but I know it's a good career decision, I forgot about all that, and like I rolled the dice. And I was lucky that my sponsors were cool with me doing that, because it kind of is a roll of the dice just to take a whole year off, and I just did everything my way. And yeah.
Did that impact you mentioned sponsors? I'm just kind of curious, like, because one of my hesitations on taking time off, whether it's from running or business or whatever, is like a step back. You know what I mean? Whether it's performance or income. And I'm curious, like, that year off, because I want to hear more about the benefits from it, but did it cost anything? Like, did you have did it impact income? Did you have any sponsors that weren't appreciative of it, or?
No, I mean, everyone was very much on board. So the way it would have impacted income would be no podium bid.
No winning. Yeah.
Outside of that, no major changes. And I mean, the reality is, I think I got a lot of recovery. The longest run I did was 42 miles, and I was constantly running pretty fast. So, after 10 years of ultra running, I think I built a very large aerobic base, and then I took a whole year to focus on just running fast.
Ooh, right.
And I think I'm currently reaping the benefits of it. Like, now I feel fast and strong.
Now you can run fast and far?
Exactly. And like,
what a concept.
Right. And I was doing it for the mental reset, but the reality is, if you're someone in the sport that's been in it for a while, I cannot exaggerate the benefits of taking a year off. I think there's a lot. Like, I've been doing this now long enough. I've literally watched waves of elite runners come and go. I can name people that most people in the sport don't even know who they are. And I really think if a lot of these elites made the decision to just chill it for a year, and maybe their sponsors won't let them, but the reality is what if you take the year off and maybe you lose a sponsor or two, but you buy yourself 6, 7, 8, 9 years versus, I'm just going to run myself into the ground for the next 3 years and be done forever. And I've watched that. I'm not going to name any names, but I've watched a lot of people do that. And, I'm on year 12 now. And like I said, I feel like I'm second winding it. Like, I'm literally getting faster.
It's fascinating. There's a lesson in that. Like, metaphorically, it's why I love talking to runners so much. It's why I love running so much, is there's all these like metaphors for life with it, but that like running yourself into the ground, and in our context, we're literally talking about it. But I see it in my entrepreneur spheres, like contemplating what the cost of not stopping would be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which it's so hard to see that on the horizon, but it's like if you keep charging at this pace that isn't sustainable, like at some point that's going to conclude.
Yeah.
And to, like you said, buying yourself more time. And I think, and this is where it might tie into the first part of my question with that evolution stuff, but it seems like you're experiencing some actual performance benefits of like you got to focus on speed for a whole year and not worry about distance necessarily. And
I got to test a lot of things.
Right. Testing. Yeah. See.
So last summer I made it a point to kind of like be a bit analytical in that, like, I was looking to see the results of my runs and how they were impacting my fitness, in terms of just kind of some of the basic stuff on Coros, like base fitness score, and I did do a VO2 max test at one point. And one of the things I played with was, what if I, instead of going out for an 18-mile run, which some 18-mile runs can be relatively difficult to recover from in 24 to 48 hours, I started doing what if I just do 2 10s or 2 11s? Then I get more volume and I'm doing something I likely can recover from in the next 6 to 12 hours, and then I can go back out and run again.
Right.
And I've basically, since last summer, been doing just loads of 2-a-days, just overload. And like, I still get out and do the long run once every 7 to 10 days, whatever that distance may be. But my focus right now is run in the morning, run in the evening, make sure it's something, at least in the morning, that I can recover from by the evening. And then the evening, I kind of make the choice of like, oh, do I want to run a little bit harder or take it easy? But I'm finding that I'm recovering faster and I'm getting much more fit. And like, when I went into Hard Rock, I was fit. There's no doubt about it. I was extraordinarily fit. And in terms of kind of all analytical fitness scores, I blew that out of the water last summer. And it felt a little odd because like I wasn't racing and I was arguably in the best shape ever.
Right.
But I'm doing that right now. And I think it should be a pretty good summer. Like, nothing's going to change. I'm going to continue to just keep doing loads of 2-a-days. And I don't think it really matters the distance you're doing. I mean, you adjust the volume, you adjust the intensity of the workouts based on the distance. But I actually, I think a lot of people are overtraining, and I've just focused more on quality over quantity. And to get like super boring and nerdy, I've also just drastically ramped up calorie content on every single run. I mean, I eat on 5-mile runs.
Right.
There's a huge recovery benefit to eating no matter what on every run. And all it does is, in layman's terms, makes your metabolic efficiency greater. So more you eat during the run, the more you can handle on race day. Not to mention, if this is a conversation I've been having with a lot of my athletes that struggle with race day nutrition. The problem is they're not eating enough during the race.
It's almost like you're not training nutrition.
Or sorry, during the training,
right.
Yes. And they're, in the last 1 to 2 years, there's been a lot of studies done that have found when you are exercising and taking in glucose and fructose, you actually increase your glucose fructose absorption rate, which means on race day you can intake more, which means you can work harder.
Right.
And I've crewed and paced so many events. I've seen so many people that get I'll just say it how it is. They get the shits
right.
around 40, 50, 60 miles. And it's because they're not eating enough during training. Their body cannot keep up with the amount of fructose they're putting in their body. And it's generally running shits because fructose requires a lot of water, and then they just end up blasting it all out.
And then you end up with hydration. I mean, then you're just swimming upstream.
Yeah.
How wild. Yeah, I never even thought about, like, to simplify it, it's like training nutrition. Just like you train your body.
Yes, and you absolutely should be. If you're looking to maximize performance, you absolutely should be. And this is why people always...
So you eat on 5-mile runs?
Absolutely.
Which for you, that's like... that's under an hour for sure.
I'll eat 200 to 300 calories on a 30 to 40 minute run. And then most runs I'm eating 300 to 500 calories an hour.
Wow.
Like, no matter what.
Right.
Because, look, the reality is, like, your car does better with a full tank than an empty tank. So I'm always trying to keep the tank completely full.
Right.
And I've been joking around that, like, I really want to make a device that you put on your arm, and it's got a blood glucose monitor on it and, like, a little vial of glucose and fructose in it. And, like, every time you just push even a little, it drips in there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that would be, like, absolutely game-changing.
I'll help you
and
market it.
also probably against all the rules in WADA to have something going straight into your veins.
Yeah.
But that's my thought process when I'm taking gels or drinking a hydration mix, is like, how can I keep the drip completely constant?
Yeah.
And we've been under fueling for so long, and I have 300 calories an hour was the standard for so long. And I look back at all these events where I suffered in the back end of the race.
And it was probably under fueling, you think?
100%. And then I run gorge. I do 430 calories an hour. Not a single moment of I was on the gas from mile 1 to mile 62.
That's fascinating. So is your goal 500?
My goal going into that was 425, and then just like after having a Coke and a ginger ale, it kind of bumped me up a bit.
Right.
I would like to get closer to 500, given that I'm going to do 200 later in the summer. I'm working with some friends who are much smarter than me on how, like, I really want to reshape how you run a 200-mile race. Like, and I think we saw a little bit of that at Cocodona. I think, the traditional thought is like, oh, you're going to do some hiking, you got to take it easy. I want to find out how do I make it so I can run a 200 like a 100.
Yeah.
And
speaking of evolution,
and train for that. And how like right now the goal is like, and this is the question, can I maintain 150, 155 heart rate for 42 hours and also consume 400 to 500 calories an hour? And like, I don't want to sit in chairs. I don't want to I want to eat gels and I want to run 200 miles.
And go.
And,
yeah.
I'm going to find out, like, can I do this? Not to say that maybe someone else totally could if I completely fail,
Right.
but, I think everything's kind of headed the right direction for that right now. So nutrition's just been a total change from what I used to do.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. So I heard somebody describe it once. Like, in fact, when you were in Denver, you made a post. You were filming the
Colfax.
The Colfax, yeah.
Yeah.
And we got to see some of that too. And I think the way you worded it was like the stepping stone to ultras or something. And I heard somebody describe it once perfectly, that the goal of a marathon is to time draining your tank perfectly with the finish line. The goal of an ultra is to never drain your tank.
Yeah.
And then you're taking it a step further, that the goal is to keep it full.
Right.
Like, it is, and that's where, I think about the evolution. We've touched on it, and this will be a perfect segue about the evolution of running and your personal evolution alongside of it. But my dad was telling stories of, he ran the St. George Marathon when he was 30 or whatever, and they ran with just glucose, just sugar water. They had never had electrolytes or anything, and it's like, gosh, no wonder you felt like crap after, and running a whole marathon with and all that. And so then you start to realize, like, all of these things that have contributed to the evolution of the sport. I think, electrolytes weren't even a thing that long ago. That's even still pretty new. The fueling is, and then we'll talk about shoes too, but,
yeah.
There's all these evolutions, and it's so cool because then it's data backed and it's like science driven as well. And then you pair that with fantastic athletes like yourself too, that like can prove these concepts true. Like, if you were to ask me to test it, my body would break down way before the science could get proven. But it's crazy. Like, like even you mentioned there, even the thought of running a 200 like a 100 is just wild to start thinking about. But we're starting to see some glimpses of it. Like,
absolutely,
we're witnessing the continual evolution of the sport even as we speak. And I'm fascinated about your journey because, you've again, and I don't even know I wouldn't be able to compare your journey or your career with anybody. Like, comparison never makes sense. But you have stayed at a very high level for a very long time. Walk me through how you've continued to evolve and like stay at the top of your game for so long.
I think diversity has helped me a lot.
Diversity in training?
Diversity in racing.
Okay.
I would consider myself a quiver runner. Like, I've done all the distances and I do all the distances, and like the 200-mile distance has been a thing that's always broke me, and like I don't do it for 4 or 5 years, and it's in these large time frames, and I think that's allowed me to stay successful at all the distances. Like, it doesn't matter if the 100-mile distance is your favorite race. Like, you could really benefit from running a half marathon.
Right.
And I think that's how the 200 will change, is like, well, I think I could benefit from running a half marathon for a 200-mile race. Like, why not raise the ceiling so that I can run faster and harder in a 200-mile event? But I've really enjoyed every distance from 50K to 100-mile, 200-mile. And I say I didn't race last summer. I didn't do any ultra races. I did do one event. It was a Cirque Series race in Utah. And like, talk about so far out of my comfort zone. Like, it was like 7 miles. And I killed myself. And there's an immense amount of value in that. And like, I think the diversity has been like a huge factor in allowing me to stay successful and also like stay somewhat injury free. Like that's the battle I think every professional runner deals with, is like you're just balancing one injury to the next,
Right.
and picking and choosing your terrain based on what feels good and what doesn't. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I don't road run. Road running's kind of lame.
But you rode bike, which is fascinating.
Yes, yeah.
Speaking of evolution, no.
For sure.
Of all the like dichotomies in life, you know, the high mountain Silverton, like literally running high, like, you know, all this stuff, and then a road bike. It's funny. It's awesome.
But there's this like, there's definitely a difference between if I'm running fast on the road, that's like maybe 10 miles an hour, 11 every once in a while,
right?
Versus road biking down like Red Mountain Pass, that's like 45
like
miles
flying.
an hour, and you're gripped, and
Right.
like this thing like just goes right back to the like nothing exists.
Actually, good point.
The nothingness. Like there's nothing about road running at any speed where like I'm gonna feel like I have to be locked in.
You're not gonna die.
Yeah. 45 miles an hour down the road, like you gotta pay attention.
Yeah.
And that's I am just now realizing that's why road biking is so appealing to me, is like it gets me in this place where it's so important
Yeah,
for me
it
to
has
focus.
to. It demands 100% of your focus.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fascinating. See, we had a breakthrough. Isn't that great?
I didn't even know why I liked road biking.
I want to. So I was telling you when you got here, I was looking for a statistic of. I thought it'd be fun. I was going to start the conversation with like testing you of what percentage of pro athletes have their own shoe, and I couldn't find it. I was like Googling it and like crazy and whatever. But they're in the business world. You know, you joke that like, you know, you've made it when you've got an airplane. In the athlete world, you know, you've made it when you've got a shoe. And I just want to talk. I want to hear like what that experience is like, and like, and also like, for one, what it represents, like how cool it is, you know, that you've got that. But then also, speaking of evolution, like what a cool shoe it is, and like I don't know, I'm fascinated with that. I think it's so cool that, you know, I've been fascinated with Speedland's model of their, I don't even know what it's called, the athlete signature, or the series.
They call them commissions. Shoe commissions.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I've always thought that that's a really cool marketing model for like overlapping spheres of influence, the artistic touch with it, the design elements and stuff. So that's what originally kind of attracted me to that brand, honestly, is from a marketing perspective. And then I run in their shoes now, and I'm obviously a huge fan on multiple levels now for a lot of different reasons. They're also just great people.
Yeah.
But I just think it's cool. And then, you know, when I saw the SVT come out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get a pair because it's my backyard, like, you know, for no reason other than that. But I want to know what that was like, and like, I don't know, just walk me through what that process looked like and how involved you were. And
so I think a part of their selection of athletes on how they pick and choose their athletes getting on the team, like, sure, accolades, you know, fitness and so on and so forth, the classic stuff does exist, but like the location and where you live very much exists, because they're creating shoes for really distinct terrain and areas, like the PDX and the Mount Tam for, in, you know, more buffed out trail in California, and then the HSV, which was actually made in Huntsville, Alabama, which I actually really liked that shoe. And then the SVT in Silverton, which the entire idea was, how do we make a shoe that is just going to stand the test of time on heinous terrain? And I would say what I enjoyed most about it is Kevin and Dave are open to everything, and I've ran for a number of shoe companies, and the number one difference between Speedland and everyone else is you can tell them when something sucks.
Right.
And I do. And that is what makes their shoes so great, is when something doesn't work, you can tell them that, and they acknowledge it, and I don't know if there's
didn't you change the placement of the boa or something?
Yeah. It started off kind of like right below your, well, on top of your peroneal tendon underneath your ankle bone. And I found that on like off trail, really steep off camber terrain, because my foot was so sideways with the mountain, the boa was digging into my peroneal tendon. And this wasn't something that was like, there was other people having this problem too, not everybody. So that was a pretty significant change that I really wanted made. So Kevin always generally will move the boa on any shoe before they send it to me, just because like that's a kind of an ongoing problem. So they were a bit back and forth on if they wanted to make that significant of a change, and I'm really pumped they did. I don't think there's any net negative that comes with the boa getting shifted up. And for me, it was awesome because towards the beginning of my running career, I worked as an employee and then also became a general manager of multiple running stores. So for years, I had ran an Avery shoe ever made. And I got a taste of what I liked, what I didn't like, what most people like and what most people don't like. And then a real reality of like, actually, in my opinion, what people need when they're running in the mountains. And like some of the staples of the SVT were flexibility. Like the HSV was a little stiff, and I wanted to get the SVT a little more flexible, especially through the forefoot and then partially through the midfoot, because when you're running up 15, 20, 25% grade, like your foot needs to bend.
Right.
So like forefoot numbness is something I've struggled with in the past with stiff shoes. The shoe got a little bit wider, also something I've struggled with. And I think the problem is like there's a lot of European brands, and I mean even American brands as well, making shoes that are just far too narrow. And it's not because people have wide feet. I think people have normal feet, and we're just wedging them into terribly designed shoes, which I've also struggled with foot injuries in the past. I won't name any of those brands, but like bad foot injuries because the shoe was far too narrow.
Right.
And then, as most people see, the lugs are 6 millimeter lugs. It's like designed for anything and everything. And, some people don't like the feel of such a big lug on hard pack, kind of buffed out terrain. I suppose I've probably just gotten used to it, so it doesn't bother me at all. But, you get tacky grip on just about everything. And one of the more important parts of the shoe is you just get a load of miles. At the end of last...
A load?
Yeah. At the end of...
Like those shoes last forever.
It's pretty wild. I mean, I ran a lot of rugged, ridiculous stuff through the summer, and at the end of the summer, like kind of on a whim, I've been going to Italy in the summer, basically every summer since 2018, minus COVID, and I didn't have a trip planned, and I was like, I gotta go to Italy, like it's just what I do. So I went to Italy at the very end of the summer for 2 weeks, and I brought one pair of SVTs that already had like 550, 600 miles on them, and I bumped them up to 800 in Italy. I only took one pair, and I wasn't concerned with the one pair I brought, and I made it through the trip. And now I'm not gonna lie, like towards the end, there was a few descents where like I would like slip on stuff because the lug had been shaved down pretty low. But like those were shoes that really hadn't seen much, but like they were on like pretty rocky, nasty terrain most of the summer, and I got a full 800 miles out of it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What's it like? Like, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I was joking, but I'm also serious. In the business world, you've made it if you have an airplane. Yeah. In the sport world, like emotionally, like tell me, like, how does that feel to know that you've got a shoe? It's the coolest thing.
Okay. So like 3 years ago, if you'd have told me I was going to have my own running shoe with a brand, I would have told you that my friends would have never heard the end of it. And, like, that's that.
Right.
And, now that it's come, I'm like very grateful for it. But like, I think this is like also partially why I, have found success is like, it's not really about what's right now, it's what's next. And that part's done. Like, we made the shoe. In my opinion, it is the best mountain running shoe
It's
ever
a sick
made.
shoe. We forgot to talk about the built-in gator too.
It's made everything else, like, I'm constantly testing stuff with Speedland, and they're great shoes, but they're nothing compared to the SVT. Like, every time I put the SVT back on, it's just like, why are we making other shoes? Like,
if it ain't broke, don't fix
this
it.
is a waste of time. Let's take the old Pearl Izumi model where we just changed the colors.
Right.
So, it's exciting. I think the most exciting part has been seeing people wear them.
Yeah.
Like at Gorge Waterfalls, there's loads of people wearing the SVT. I saw people at the Arizona Monster wearing it, at the Cocodona. Like, I get to go to a start line and, look, the reality is like 99% of the credit goes to Kevin and Dave. Majority of the ideas were theirs, and then I would just say, hey, this doesn't work or this does work. I will take credit for the insole. I don't know if you noticed, the insole has like little indentations on it.
Yeah.
So this was an original idea for me. So the idea behind that was, again, like on off-cambered terrain. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like, especially the new socks, you like slip off of the side of the shoe. So the idea was, I was like, can we like maybe try putting like indentations on there so your foot
less slip?
Yes, and it definitely makes a difference. Like, you get on something enough off camera,
Sure.
like you're probably gonna roll a little bit off. But so that was one of my original ideas.
I'm giving you all the credit.
So I don't necessarily know how I was going there.
Well, I want to get back to that because that you something fascinating there. And it's almost a full circle moment, but that like it contributes to the longevity, the evolution, all that balancing act of, because it's almost like and the tone in which you're saying it is not a negative one. Like, you're not like, it's done, like whatever. But it's like, that's cool. I'm grateful for that. Eyes forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unpack that for me. Like that mindset behind it, and kind of like your thought process on continually looking to what's next, continue looking for, what's on the horizon, and that, like,
I think what ends up happening is as I accomplish things, they humble me, because like even going into races, like, there's always this idea of like the finish line and what that's going to look like, and never has it looked like what I think it is at the end. It's always this experience of just like collapse.
Right.
And part of that is if you have it, I just think you should always finish with everything. Like the holding hands, and like, I think that's played out. Like, I think it's special to just kill yourself.
To drain it.
And, I always have these ideas of like, I'm going to cross the finish line and it's going to be this big roar, or, whatever the celebration might be. And that's never happened. Like, that's never happened, because I get there and I'm dead and it's over.
Right.
And it's like the very next day, for me, like, it's really hard to celebrate because it's what's next. And honestly, most of the time, the what's next is not a race. It's like, okay, sick, I just spent the whole summer in Chamonix. Like, I'm ready to go home and like bag all of my favorite peaks, and like, I'm ready for the fall in Silverton. It's always what's next. And honestly, come fall, I'm like, I'm going to get my snowboard out and wax it so like it's ready for like the first 12-inch storm when I'm skiing rocks. Like,
do you think that do you think that's a good thing? Like that what's next? Or do you think that there's, I don't know, like, do you think that maybe there's, okay, so there's it's called the finish line fallacy, actually, coincidentally. But it's basically this idea that we think the next milestone is going to be it for us. Like, that's when now I can be happy, or like, that's now when I can be proud of myself, or that's when I can, say that I've made it, or I've done it, or whatever. And it's something I'm working on. That's why I'm fascinated with your response there, because I have it all. Like, I've got it all. I've got 3 kids in Durango. I've got this amazing place. I've got a bit. I've got it all.
That's how I feel.
But I'm like, what's next? What's next? That like look ahead thing. And I wonder sometimes if guys like us, it's so delicate, because like because I share that mindset of like, what's next? You know, like my wins are brief. Like it's so funny because I'll accomplish something and I'm proud of it for like a day. Like literally.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
we saved up our money for years to buy that Airbnb in Moab, and I was so excited for like a week. And then I'm like, what's next? You know? and it's good and bad because it's what's driven me. You know, it's like it's why I'm hard. It's why you're where you are. You know, it's like that drive. I wonder sometimes if like there shouldn't be a little bit more appreciation of the finish line and like that slowdown and, you know, enjoy it moment. And I'm not saying that I'm the worst one at it, like for sure. But I struggle with it. I'm curious your thoughts on that, of like the pros and cons to that. What's next thing? Because like on one hand, you know, just because you have a shoe doesn't mean now we put it up on the shelf and we kick back, put our feet on the table and call it a career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you've got a shoe on the, you know, and I'm using that as an example, but like all these things that we've accomplished, do you think that that forward mentality is only good, or do you think there's pros and cons with it?
Well, okay. I'm going to kind of jump around here. This is going to not make sense at the start.
I'm here for it.
So I currently coach a few handfuls of athletes, and I genuinely believe every single one of them decided to take on coaching because they want to see how much better they can get. They don't necessarily want, like, yes, they want better race results, but what I tell them and what I tell every athlete before going into a race is that you need to hope for the best and plan for the worst, because running is a lot like golf. You're only going to hit a hole-in-one once or twice, maybe, but you're going to keep coming back for it. And the reality is some of the best runs of your life, just probability speaking, are not going to happen on race day.
Right.
Because you have, 3, 4, 5 days out of the year that you race. Out of an entire calendar year, what are the odds that is the best run of your life?
Right.
Or even that year for that matter. So, like, that's kind of how I think that is how I end up looking at racing, is like, I'm going to leave it all out there, but the reality is it's not going to be the best race of my life. And if it's not, that's how it's so much easier to look to the next thing. Like, I have had very much standout races that those were very fulfilling, and I did hold on to that for weeks into months. But that's like, you know, I've ran 55, 60 ultras, and like that's like maybe 3 or 4. So, and I know that's the reality, and because it is the reality, when I go into a race, like the idea is just like, can I get to the finish line exhausted? And like, there's some goals and some nuggets along the way to help keep pushing me. But like, I it's insane to have an expectation that this is going to be the best day of my life.
Right.
The reality of that is slim, and I know.
Just even statistically speaking.
Yeah. It's like, it's not realistic. And I think most ultra runners, especially elites, have an expectation of that. And guess what? All but one win.
Right.
So most of the time they don't hit it. And I think this is also what can lead to mental burnout in the sport, is like, you don't.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I'm here for the hole-in-one, but I realize those hole-in-one days are like when I went for this like sick 33-mile loop around Silverton, or like whatever it was. And like, those are the moments that I totally live for. And like, those are the runs I remember just as well as the races.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. And I think the takeaway from that is that you have to be, like, you have to keep coming back then. Mm-hmm. Because we're trying to catch lightning in a bottle. I mean, really. Yep. Trying to hit a hole-in-one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But the reality is like, I could probably get the ball a little closer to the hole.
Sure. Yeah, and there's like those tweaks and those takeaways.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the mid-packers like me, I'm like, oh man, if I would have had every time after a race, I'm like, you know, these 2 variables didn't go right. I mean, if I tweaked those a little bit, I probably could save an hour, you know, or whatever. And then you're like thinking it through, and then you fix that one thing, and then the next race you have a different problem. And
yeah,
you know.
You're like constantly learning, and like, and every once in a while you just
it all comes together.
Nail it on the head.
And those ones last?
Those ones absolutely last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because it all came together, or do you think because there's that, like, maybe because there's not a problem left to solve, or there wasn't, like...
I think I proved something to myself and maybe even also to my peers, to be honest. Like,
right.
Like the events that I did really well at, I proved something big time. Like, you know, and I feel like I've been kind of an underdog in most events that I go to, which is rad because I usually far outperform everyone else's expectations.
Right.
And maybe at some point people will change their mind, but
Punching above your weight class.
Yeah.
Hey, well, and being the underdogs, it's such a great place to be. You mentioned something early on. I think I'm an underdog too in my endeavors, my professional endeavors. You mentioned earlier, you used the word like ignorantly optimistic or something. I forget exactly how you worded it, but I've shared the story, but it related so much to me. Like when I started my company, when I quit my corporate job and I took the leap and started it, thank God I was clueless. Like, had I known how ill prepared I was and how hard it would have been and, like, all that stuff, I wouldn't have done it. I just was like, I got this,
Right.
Clueless confidence that.
If you know exactly how much stress it was going to be and all of the variables.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if I would have known in hindsight how hard it would have been, I wouldn't have done it. So there's something about that, like, towing the starting line as the underdog, sprinkled in with that, like, naive optimism.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then every once in a while, variables line out.
Yeah.
And the day happens.
Yeah. And the reality is like most of those the races that I did really well at, I just was patient.
Right.
And didn't let my ego get wrapped up into
patient day of, or patient in the training.
Patient day of.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But I mean, I like to look at races in very different lights. There's races like Western States where, I knew I was racing against a lot of really good runners. So, like, it just wasn't in my best interest to chase Jim Walmsley at the start of the race.
Right.
Also, I know that I can't. And that just led to a really successful race because I was just doing my own thing. And then there's races like Run Rabbit a few years ago. It was the end of the season. I was supposed to be running UTMB and got COVID the week of the race, like proper COVID. There was no running.
Right.
And it kind of just totally threw a wrench in my whole season. So I decided to sign up for Run Rabbit Run. And the way I looked at that event was like, well, like I feel like my season's been kind of like totally screwed at this point. I'm just going to see if I can run a time at Run Rabbit that just doesn't get touched for years. And I went out really hot and ran really hard, and it was good till it wasn't. And I knew that was going to be the case. And
but like worth a try.
Exactly. And I thought, it'd be a lot of fun giving it a go. I will finish the race, and I still finished in a spot that was respectable. It just wasn't what my original goal was.
There's something empowering about that. Like, for lack of a better term, having nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I'm curious if your relationship with, because like a guy like me, every race I've got nothing to lose. Like, honestly, as long as I'm not DFL, it's a success. For me, jokes aside, very sincerely, finishing is the goal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I usually have goal times in mind, but they're soft, and I'm like, because I'm so, as I'm a mid-packer, it is what it is. You don't have nothing to lose, when you're most of the time, like in that example, obviously, the season had changed and stuff. I'm curious if that changes your relationship with the sport and running, or if there's like mental tricks that you've learned to get yourself into that space to run. Because you've also a few times in this conversation mentioned this idea of like running your own race, or like, not chasing that guy, or, doing whatever, like being in that headspace of it. I'm curious how you approach that and how you kind of balance expectations and pressure, both external and, that you put on yourself, and then like running your own race. How do you balance that?
Well, there's been a pretty significant change in the last 2 years that's allowed me to just be in a really good, healthy place. Previous to last season, I'd say the few years before that, there's a lot of anxiety around performance and doing really, really, really well, and getting the podium bonuses, and it put an enormous amount of anxiety on me that I didn't even realize was there. And between last year and this year, I don't even know how to describe what happened. I've just become very happy with day-to-day life, and happy with just everything. And I think this is pretty cliche, but like the reality is happiness leads to success and not the other way around. And I, for years, was really searching for success to make me happy. And right now, look, 9th place doesn't sound very sexy, but the reality is I ran a sub 900K on what people consider a pretty tough course. Yeah. And I call that that was a success. And I accomplished that because I'm just in a really good mental place. And how to help people get there, unfortunately, I may not be the person, but I'm just in a place where I'm very relaxed, and I have really big goals, but I don't feel the pressure, and that's allowing me to be running really, really well right now.
Happiness leads to success, not the other way around. I love it.
Yeah.
What, and I know you don't have the formula for everybody, but in your story, what was the change? Where did the happiness come from?
Doing things my way and being okay with that, and realizing that my running is not going to look like most elite runners' schedule. It's probably going to be less volume. It might even be a little less threshold work, but I'm supplementing it with things that I enjoy. I mean, at the end of the day, there's an old saying that's the heart doesn't know what you're doing.
Right.
So aerobic endurance and anaerobic endurance are exactly that. So if you're pushing hard on a bike, if you're pushing hard on skis, same. There comes a time where, yes, you do have to run, but I am letting what makes me happy guide my decision every day. So if I wake up tomorrow and don't want to run, I'm not going to run, period. Look, I have an enormous amount of work ethic, and I trust in that. So I'm what do I have to worry about? I understand that some people, they need the David Goggins because they're not good at waking up early on Monday and getting out for a run. I am really good at waking up early. That's all I do. And I'm good at getting out for the runs that I know are necessary, but don't do the unnecessary runs that aren't fulfilling, when they're the reality is there's a handful of other things I can do today to improve my fitness, but also make sure I'm staying right in the sweet spot and maintaining happiness.
Right. What a great perspective. It's so, because I'm simple. I do not need more David. I've got it. I can wake up early. In fact, I have the opposite problem. You know what I mean? I work too hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And what a great reminder that and it ties into that finish line fallacy. We think that we get this thing, the success is going to lead to happiness, but the happiness is what's going to lead to the success. And I think that contributes to the longevity. Coming back to the evolution and how you've maintained, this high performance for so long. Yeah. I mean, when I look at it in the business context, it's if I'm not enjoying this, there's no way this is going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can work tons of hours, long hours. I mean, I can grind, especially when I'm having fun. And there are times when I am. And that's when things get cool. Yeah. Because you're rocking and rolling and, getting a bunch of stuff done. When it's turned into, when it's miserable, monotonous work, is then when the work ethic thing is a problem for me, when it's like that. But I love that takeaway of happiness leading to success, not the other way around.
I think it's just all flexibility. And then, this is going to vary for people, but I have an enormous amount of faith in my fitness after 12 years of
Right.
doing this. So, like, look, if something comes up and, I got to drive 4 or 5 hours somewhere and do this thing, and like today's just going to be a wash. Today's going to be
okay.
Today's going to be a wash.
Right.
Like, it's all good.
Right.
I'll make up for it. Side note, I'm racing David Goggins for a second time
Are you?
this summer. Yeah, he signed up for Bigfoot.
Sweet, yeah. Which is the perfect segue, because I was going to ask you what's next, but that's got to be a little, and I'm sure David is listening because I have a huge audience, So David, no offense, but we should call him Goggins probably, but that's got to be wild, like, I don't know, just some of the exposure that some of those guys bring to the sport and the different mindsets at the starting lines and stuff. I mean, we don't have to unpack it, but that's got to be, it's just got to be an interesting, if nothing else, fascinating.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the evolution too, is like we're getting, and I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, we're getting more of the social media influencer type
right.
coming in. And that's not to take away, like David Goggins is clearly an incredible athlete. However, he has the huge following from all the stuff that he's done. And like, yes, he's an ultra runner. He is not an elite ultra runner. Maybe, I don't know if I think that's fair. But he's bringing in just so many eyes and
massive exposure.
Cam Hanes and Andrew Glaze and so on and so forth. And that really helps change the sport, because those guys could help bring in more men and women that had no idea about the sport, and they're just going to help grow it and make it faster. And
So it's a good thing.
It's a great thing.
Yeah,
it's a great thing. I mean that's kind of neat. Like, I raced him in 2016, and like I got to tell my parents I beat David Goggins at a race. Like, it's kind of fun.
That carries some weight.
Well, and there's a lot of like normal people in the world that like they actually don't really like all my friends in the Midwest and acquaintances, so on and so forth. They don't know what it means when you do well at Western States against all the names.
Right.
But when I go home to visit and I tell them that I beat David Goggins at a race, they're like, "No way, you didn't beat David Goggins." And it's like, well, by like hours and hours, yes.
But yeah, no, and that's interesting. And I'm actually appreciative of your perspective of that exposure is a good thing. It's actually not what I expected from you. Like I expected that there would be kind of a negative connotation with that. But the exposure, the evolution, the introduction to other people to it, I mean,
and good for him too. Like,
right,
he probably has a very different approach to how he mentally goes into that than I do. But he's going to cover 200 miles.
Yeah.
Or intends on it.
Which, no matter how long that takes,
it's hard.
Something.
It's hard.
Right.
It's hard for first to last. It sucks.
Right. Yeah. So. I'm like the hype man out there. I'm just the slow, goofy guy, but I'm just pumping everybody up, and like it's how I do it. I don't know why. It's like so I'm a volunteer firefighter too, and when things get tough, for some reason, that's
when the volume gets turned up.
Yeah, like, here we go. Like this is what we're made for. I don't know what it is, like, but if things are going well for me, it's probably a bad thing, because like with some adversity, luckily I get to just like rally it. But that is what's cool, is like you get to see how people overcome adversity in different ways, and like the different approaches, the different mindsets, and all of that. And generally speaking, I mean, it's such a good thing for so many people. Yeah. It's so healing, and I mean, you talk about one of the most purest communities in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met an ultra runner that I didn't like. Everybody's just amazing people, and anyway, it's cool. I'm stoked on your perspective of that it's a good thing. Not what I expected. I'm stoked on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me more about Tahoe, or I'm sorry, about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
200, because what's on the horizon is my point.
Yeah.
Eyes ahead.
Yep. So in a month I'll do, so like kind of speaking on diversity through a season, I'm going to do a sky running race in Alberta, meet the Minotaur. It's 20 miles with 9,000 feet of gain, just a super rad mountain race, hyper technical and big ascents, big descents. And then the week after that, do John Kappa's 50K in Silverton, which I've ran it twice, and the first time was when I first moved to Silverton, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Right.
Now this is just like the standard
backyard.
This is like, I know everywhere we're going. Like I know every rock and route on the route. So I'm just looking forward to, it's a total underground run. However, it's unique because there's just nothing in the U.S. like it. Just big mountain running. So it's 50K with like 16 or 17,000 feet of gain. And what's wild is it used to be 50K with like 22,000. I think for the better, the race technically got easier, but like it's got some really sick true ridgeline running on the back half that allows you to like actually run.
Right.
So I think the race got better. And then August 8th is Bigfoot, which is the focus. That's
the A race.
Yeah, this other stuff is just like get fit, have fun. Gorge, had fun. Meet the Minotaur, like we're gonna run up a few mountains, like I'm sure I'll have fun. And then the home event will be a blast because I'll just run back to my house.
Right.
I'll do the warm up from my house to the start line. But yeah, we kind of briefly hit on Bigfoot 200. Like I want to run pretty fast. I think I probably should just ask somebody, but last year there was some times that were ran on that course that were quite a bit faster than previous years by some competitors that like I was a little confused because it seemed a little quick. So my guess is last year there had to have been like some fires and they had to reroute because it got faster in a way that didn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
So I'm kind of having a difficult time navigating like what the realistic goal is. I think it's 44 hours. I mean, faster would be pretty cool, but yeah. So basically like a 20-hour first 100 and then 24-ish hour second 100.
Wild.
It's so the reason why I'm actually running Bigfoot, I intended on running Tour de Jean. And I put my name in the lottery. It didn't get drawn. And so like I've had decent communications with them over the years. So I emailed them and said, hey, like, is there anything we can do about maybe I can get into the race one way or another? And like 6 or 7 weeks pass and I don't hear from them. So I just assume like, oh, they're tired of hearing from me. Like, cause right. I've emailed them in the past and signed up and then not shown up because of, whether it be injuries or whatever. And so I thought, well, that's fair. Like
I blew it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like maybe I burnt that bridge. Like I'm just going to have to get in a lottery. So I reach out to Candace and say the same thing. Like, yo, I'll volunteer at Moab. I'll, talk about your race, Bigfoot 200.
Shameless plug.
And so on and so forth. And, she got back to me almost immediately and put me in the event. And so very grateful for that. The very next morning I hear from Tour de Jean.
Of course.
I mean, I'm not kidding. It was the very next morning.
So that bridge is torched. No, I'm just kidding, but...
Very next morning. And so I have to email Tour and I'm like, so I kind of got into this other race and it'd be really dirty if I just like bailed on them now. Like
right.
They rolled she rolled the red carpet out and is really helping me out. So like I can't.
Right.
So I told them, hey, next year. So I'm running Bigfoot.
That's so funny.
And like,
that's how life happens.
I'm not like wickedly interested in like majority of the U.S. ones. Bigfoot is fascinating because it's point to point. It's got the most vertical per mile of all the 200s in the U.S., which I would prefer. The biggest difference in what I found kind of enticing was, Tour de Jean has like 88,000 feet of climb, and Bigfoot has 45,000 feet of climb. When I see that, I start like calculating like, can I run nearly every step of this event?
Right.
Like that's a drastic difference from something like Tour de Jean where like you're not running every step of that. Like no one is, like at all. Like it's actually kind of realistic that like, yeah, like there's some washes like coming out of ravines where like,
Well, sure.
you're not running when it's like kind of scrambly, but majority of the event I think is largely runnable.
For you.
And so that's the idea is like.
Speaking of benefits of living in Silverton, by the way.
Exactly. And like, that's kind of how I'm approaching the training is like, well, if I can kind of match or do a little more vertical per mile in Silverton, and the idea is to get somewhere in between 10:30 and 12-minute pace and kind of see how long I can maintain my heart rate right around 150, 155. Well, what happens when I go to Bigfoot when it's like 2,000 to 7,000 feet? Like, you know, the idea is, well, I should be able to run 11-minute miles, but my heart rate will probably be like 145, 140. And so I just like really want to flirt with like what is really possible.
Right.
And, you know, ideally make it a really respectable event, the way kind of Cocodona is growing in terms of like, I mean, I think 44 hours at Bigfoot's respectable, just like at Cocodona, I really think in less than 3 years, 48 hours is like the thing. And I'm not saying that's me. I'm just saying like the reality is like, guys, if Jim Walmsley ran this, he would have dusted all of you. Like, assuming he finishes the race.
Right.
But like, he's the type of person that could totally stack 2 17-hour hundreds on there, assuming he, you know, made the training right. And then what? Like, we're looking at like a 43-hour Cocodona 250.
It's unfathomable.
So, you know,
but yeah,
it's like, I think it's just getting started, and you know, I'd kind of like to be that like evolution that changes 200s, and I think it's possible. So
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I fully realize someone else is just going to come along. Like I can set a bar and show people like, oh, look, 44 hours is possible, and I guarantee you, immediately someone else is going to think, oh, Avery Collins ran 44 hours, I can run 40,
right.
And I respect that. Like, you can, and I want to set that bar for the next person. Like, I'm not the best runner, but I know where my levels are. And if I can show other people, like, hey, this is where it's at, like, you could totally destroy me.
And then it's a breakthrough for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've seen it in running forever. I mean, think about the first time somebody broke a 4-minute mile.
Exactly.
Once the threshold's broken, it's like, and I don't know if it's a psychological thing or a mental thing or whatever, but all of a sudden you realize it's possible, and then, you know,
isn't it incredible? Like,
it's crazy.
If you see someone do something, you can totally visualize yourself doing it. And I've done that a lot. Like, there are people that I've seen them run certain times at races, and then I go do it because I saw, like, oh, he did it, like, I know I can do it.
Right.
And you know, I want to be on the other side of that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Avery, thank you so much. It's so fun to pick your brain. I mean, I could sit and talk to you for hours, and I just got to tell you how much I appreciate the conversation and the time, how much I appreciate your perspective. I mean, gosh, there's been a dozen nuggets and life lessons in the conversation, but I got to tell you how excited I am to see the second wind, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Too.
Like this next chapter, the next evolution, I can sense it.
Yeah,
I can feel the energy. You know,
I was making.
We got the haircut.
Yeah,
we got the. I mean, all the
fresh shave.
Lined up, but seriously, like I can tell that it's there, and it's going to be really cool to see. It's going to be really cool to see what the next 10 years bring you. And I just want you to know I'm going to be in your corner, cheering loud for you. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the heck out of you. So I've got my tradition here.
Oh, sweet, man.
The Inspired by Example shirts, because you really are. It is, and for everybody listening, if you don't, follow Avery on social, do. I mean, like, just everything that you're putting out there it's uplifting, it's positive, it's inspiring, and it's just really cool to see, 11 plus years of evolution.
Yeah.
And you're just getting started. I can tell.
It feels like that, yeah.
I can't wait.
It's weird. Yeah. It's weird. I mean, 2 years ago, I was like starting to make total life altering, like, this is over, it's time to pick something else. And now I'm like, it's game on. It's game on.
The second wind.
We've got some time left here. So.
Yeah, I love it. Avery, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
It's been
Thank
awesome.
you.